Hello students, let us start our session on the economic survey. In the first session we have covered the broader theme of the survey. Now let us cover the chapter number 1 to chapter number 3. The chapter number 1 gives us the entire overview of the survey. The major trend for the Indian economy, what do we expect and why do we expect that? So first of all, the most important part of the chapter number 1 is the history of economic crisis that it highlights. The chapter number 1 tells us all the major economic crises that have happened in the last 1 century. So it starts with the First World War. That was almost a century ago, or that finished almost a century ago. Immediately after the First World War, when the economic crisis was still there was outbreak of the Spanish flu, which was very similar to the COVID outbreak. After the Spanish flu, we had the outbreak of the Great Depression and then the Second World War. After that, we created the organizations like World Bank, IMF to prevent such crises in future. And for almost 20 years, we did not had another major crisis. But in 1973, with the creation of OPEC, oil prices increased significantly and we had the crisis in the form of increase in oil prices. First in 1973 and secondly in 1978. This pushed many economies into crisis. This increased the inflation rate to a record level. And this increased the inflation level even in Europe, USA to a double-digit mark. A level which has been experienced by them very recently. Okay. And then we discussed how there was an East Asian currency crisis, Latin American debt crisis, followed by the subprime crisis, followed by the pandemic, and in between the taper tantrums, etc. So this part we have already covered, but I have very briefly summarized since it is also part of chapter number 1. Now, once we have already covered these important events and developments, then we have to remember the current context. Okay? The current context is the survey very boldly announced that the recovery is now complete. And by saying so, the economic survey means that the pandemic is effectively finished. मतलब कोविड क्राइसिस अब खत्म हो गया है या समाप्त हो गया है. Why can we say so? हम ऐसा कैसे कह सकते हैं? So that is what survey now highlights. So the economic survey first of all argues that we have completed almost near universal vaccination. Our vaccinations are excellent. And that is why we do not expect a major outbreak now. Even if the infection rates would be high, hospitalization rates are likely to remain low, and more so the mortality rates. We expect them to be even lower. Particularly the experience with Omicron previous year has emboldened us. It has given us more strength. Because in Omicron, the number of cases increased very rapidly, but not the hospitalization and fatalities were in fact very, very low. So that really gave us a lot of confidence. The second important feature which gives us confidence why the recovery is complete and why we are almost out, not almost, they say we are out of crisis. Okay, so even we have removed the word almost now. And for this, their argument is the capacity utilization in private sector is now complete. So argument is that the factories started working under capacity. हमारी जो factories थी वो अपनी capacity पे काम नहीं कर रही थी. So many workers went back home and many of them did not return or return very late. But now we can very easily say that the workers are now almost back. The factories are not only producing what they were producing pre-COVID, but rather they are exceeding those levels. And this gives us confidence that the impact of pandemic that was there on economy is almost over. Okay. Now the factories are operating at a ratio of 80%. And this is one of the highest ratio even in the last 10 years. Forget about the pre-COVID. We are performing best in the previous decade. Then there are other indicators. For example, there is a business expectation index, there is a PMI index, okay, purchasing managers index. So all of these are remaining very positive for India. And even the international scenario is looking good. This we have also covered in the part 1, which was about the broader theme of the survey, which tells us that the Europe, USA, they've performed better than expectation. So that is also a reason for confidence. Another reason is the consumption to GDP ratio. Consumption to GDP ratio roughly measures how much people are consuming, how much demand is there in the economy. And people create demand only when they are confident. When people are afraid, they would rather like to save their money. They would like to hold back their consumption. But now, the consumption level in Indian economy are very high, almost 60% of the GDP, which is not even pre-pandemic, which is one of the highest level in the last decade. That is what we are saying. We are not only above the pre-pandemic numbers, but rather we are at the best levels in the past decade. So Indian economy is performing at its peak in almost 10 years. This is what we are observing everywhere. Okay, so जब लोग बाजार जाएंगे, ज़्यादा सामान खरीदेंगे, तो इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ रेट भी ज़्यादा होगा. And when there is economic growth rate which is good, that gives us confidence to people itself also. In short, if I have to summarize, मैं ये कह सकता हूँ, लगभग सभी इंडेक्सेस, लगभग सभी सर्वेस ये कह रहे हैं और ऐसा इंगित कर रहे हैं कि लोगों का कॉन्फिडेंस इकोनॉमी में काफ़ी ज़्यादा है. लोगों को लगता है अब इकोनॉमिक परफॉर्मेंस अच्छा होगा, कोविड क्राइसिस लगभग ख़त्म हो चुका है और अब जो भी कोविड के दौरान उनकी पेंट अप डिमांड थी, देयर इज़ अ कॉन्सेप्ट कॉल्ड पेंट अप डिमांड एंड दिस आई विल ब्रीफली एक्सप्लेन हियर. सो पीपल हैड दिस पेंट अप डिमांड. लोगों की कुछ पेंट अप डिमांड थी, मतलब कुछ अधूरी इच्छाएं, ओके, विच दे हेल्ड बैक, जो उन्होंने पूरी नहीं की कोविड के दौरान, क्योंकि वो डरे हुए थे और वो कुछ समय के लिए अपनी परचेज या अपनी खरीद पर रोक लगाना चाहते थे. नाउ लेट मी स्विच बैक टू इंग्लिश वंस अगेन. सो पेंट अप डिमांड और लेटेंट डिमांड is a very similar concept. It has come from the latent heat in the physics. So, any economy, if its fundamentals are good, but temporarily there is a global crisis or there is a fear, then what happens? People do not cancel their demand, they postpone their demand. For example, I wanted to purchase a luxury car. But looking at the lockdowns, I would observe that, okay, it's not very good time to buy a car perhaps. Maybe I can wait for some time. The things are not going on very well. The economy is not seeming well. Okay, everywhere around there is a crisis-like situation. Maybe I will be better off postponing this purchase. I will buy this car later. That is how a lot of people think. Even though they wanted to buy this car, they had the money, but still they postponed their purchase because of the overall environment which was gloomy. Now when crisis is over, these people will be rushing to the showroom and there will be shortage of products. And this is exactly what Indian economy is also observing these days. So this tells us that there was a pent-up demand, a latent demand. Our production capacity was intact. We didn't lose anything during COVID. For 1 year temporarily, our production was less than optimal. मतलब जितना हम प्रोडक्शन कर सकते थे, हम उससे कम प्रोडक्शन कर पाए सिर्फ 1 साल के लिए. लेकिन इससे हमारी परमानेंट प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी पे असर नहीं पड़ा. इसलिए हम वापस उसी लेवल पर बड़ी जल्दी आ गए जहां हम पहले थे. So that is what we are trying to highlight. Now, coming back to the reasons why we are very confident, the next point is the capital expenditure is high. Capital expenditure means the expenditure on the development, expenditure on the infrastructure, etc. So the combined capital expenditure of center plus state is hovering around 13%. The center's capital expenditure last year is 19%, which is highest ever. Okay. And this 19% means that almost 20% or almost 1/5 of our budget is now spent for development expenditure, which is a very, very positive development. Okay. Some of the other reasons why we are very confident: the direct tax collection of the first 8 months in 2022 is very good. Okay, around 8.7 lakh crore, whereas it was only 5.4 lakh crore in 2019. So means from pre-COVID levels, we are already exceeding 25-30% in our tax collections. Okay, similarly, if we compare it to 2020 or even 21, it is very, very high. Even from last year, it is almost 25% higher. Okay, forget about comparing it 3 years back. Even if you compare last year, this number is very high. So our revenue is increasing at a very good rate, and that means companies are doing well, people are getting better income. Okay, that is only when the taxes grow rapidly. And then the indirect tax collection. Okay, the indirect tax collection is almost 12 lakh crore. Last year this number was only 8.1 lakh crore for the same 8 months. मतलब लास्ट ईयर, पिछले साल हमने 8 लाख करोड़ का टैक्स कलेक्ट किया था 8 महीने में. इस साल हमने 12 लाख करोड़ का टैक्स कलेक्ट किया है 8 महीने में. दिस इटसेल्फ टेल्स अ लॉट. Okay. Then the small companies are taking loans at a very fast pace. This is also a good thing. That means they are in expansion mode. छोटी छोटी कंपनियां, छोटे छोटे एंटरप्राइजेस, वो काफ़ी लोन ले रही हैं और वो नई मशीनरी लगा रही हैं, अपने प्लांट का एक्सपेंशन कर रही हैं, और ये भी एक बहुत पॉजिटिव साइन है. सो एमएसएमई क्रेडिट इज गोइंग वेरी फास्ट, एंड यू नो हाउ फास्ट? 30-40% growth in the MSME credit. This is incredible. That means revival of manufacturing. Then another very positive sign is the decline in NPAs. Our NPAs have gone low. Okay, NPA, non-performing assets in the bank. They are a very bad indicator in the banking system and they affect the lending. But if NPAs are low, that is a very, very positive sign. So NPAs in the private banks have now touched even 4%. And in public banks, they have fallen down to 7%. 3 years ago, they were around 9% and 6% respectively. So our NPA numbers have fallen by almost 2 to 2.5%, which is a very good development, by the way. The rural unemployment rate, sorry, my bad. The urban unemployment rate is lowest in the last 4 years. This again is a very important development. Okay. And you know what is special about it? Not only the unemployment number is the lowest in the last 4 years, this is on top of the fact that our population has increased meanwhile and the labor force participation rate has also increased. मतलब एक तो population बढ़ रही है और दूसरा उसी population के ज़्यादा लोग अब labor force में participate कर रहे हैं. मान लीजिए पहले population 100 थी और labor force participation 60 था, मतलब 60 लोग नौकरी ढूंढ रहे हैं. अब पॉपुलेशन बढ़ के 110 हो गई है मान लीजिए, और लेबर फोर्स पार्टिसिपेशन रेट बढ़ के 65 हो गया. इसका मतलब होगा कि अब 65 लोग नौकरी नहीं ढूंढ रहे, इसका मतलब होगा 72 लोग नौकरी ढूंढ रहे. 72 people are searching for the jobs. And within that, if we say the unemployment rate has fallen down, that means not only are we growing the number of jobs for additional 12 people who are looking for job, we have also reduced it for the people who were there earlier. मतलब हमने अपनी जॉब क्रिएशन को बहुत ही मैसिव स्केल पे बढ़ाया है. That is this data means. So that is also a very positive indicator. So this first chapter basically highlights all the positive signs which are telling us that we will be growing very fast in the future. Why we are likely to achieve our targets of the 5 trillion economy and 10 trillion economy very soon. Okay. And this is all when Europe, USA, their performance has also been better than expected. So this has given us a very strong hope for the future. So this was the chapter number 1. Okay. Broadly, this chapter I've already covered in the theme of the survey, because in order to cover the theme, I anyways had to cover up the first 2 chapters also. But since when I've come to the first chapter, I've covered it in more detail. And I'm also trying to explain it a little more. And I'm getting into more data here. I'm giving more details compared to the theme. Theme I covered up as a general summary of everything. as a broader explanation. But now I'm trying to be a bit more bilingual. मैं थोड़ा कोशिश करूंगा साथ में हिंदी में भी समझाऊं, काफ़ी स्टूडेंट्स को उससे हेल्प मिलता है. और जो स्टूडेंट्स हिंदी नहीं समझते हैं, द स्टूडेंट्स हु डू नॉट फॉलो हिंदी, they do not have to worry because there is nothing in Hindi which I've said exclusively. Whatever I've said in Hindi is also repeated in English also. And it's not that I'm repeating everything. Okay? So you do not have to bother with that. But for a large number of students, almost half of the students, it is very beneficial if I can repeat some lines, if I can explain a bit of it in Hindi. Believe me, if I could explain in Telugu, Kannada, or any other language, I would have loved to do so as well, maybe in a separate video, but unfortunately my command on any other language is not so good that I can cover it here in the form of a video. Okay, so over the language where my command is good, at least let me help out some of the students. And by the way, I'm trying to learn a bit of Telugu, so I'm not yet very proficient in, not very, rather I'm not proficient at all in speaking it, but I hope in future maybe I can do a video in Telugu on economics. Okay, so let's see if I hope that future comes very soon. Now let us come to the chapter number 2. The chapter number 2 is also about optimism and hope, and this also almost continues the chapter number 1. And according to me, this chapter number 2 in the survey is the most important chapter this year. This chapter tries to explain that the reforms need not give us result immediately. Okay, the chapter actually is explaining that we have brought a lot of reforms, yet the growth is not very good, and there are reasons for that. It also tries to compare it in the past. For example, similarly, during the period of Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, from almost 2000 to 2003, we brought a large number of reforms, but they started giving us benefit from 2003 onwards only. Only the last year of his government had 8% growth, and it is the next government which actually enjoyed more higher growth. So chapter actually explains what kind of reforms have we brought ever since 1991. It summarizes on the reforms. It then tells us about the result of the reforms. It also explains why the results were not immediate. हमें results साथ साथ क्यों नहीं मिले? Okay, and then it comes to the current period. So let us start it. This very interesting chapter. Believe me, this is one of the best chapter in the survey. So the survey first of all talks about the crisis in 1990. So I hope all of the students are aware what happened in 1990. See, in 1990, Indian economy was already very bad. In 1970s and 80s, we did very poorly on our industry. We had a license permit Raj system. It was very difficult for private sector to operate in this country. Foreign exchange was not available. Import quotas were there. Okay, even if you were producing something, you could not produce it as per your desire because you could not import the raw material in adequate numbers. Factories didn't used to work at capacity. Those who had good relations with the bureaucracy and the politicians, they only survived and thrived at that time. So this was the period in the 70s and the 80s. Now in 1990, what happened? In 1990, two major things happened because of the same event. I'm sure all of you are a bit aware of the international developments. So in 1979, Iran had a revolution under which they overthrew the USA-backed government, and Ayatollah Khomeini, the Shah, okay, the new Shah of the Iran, that took over the power. And Shah, right from very beginning, this Ayatollah Khomeini, he was against the USA, he was against the Israel. And as a result, from 1979 or maybe from 1980 onwards, USA started supporting Saddam Hussein. So USA was the only one which created Osama bin Laden to get rid of Soviets in Afghanistan. USA was also the one which created Saddam Hussein to get rid of Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. Ayatollah Khomeini, when he came to power in Iran, he encouraged similar revolution in Iraq. That would mean the Shia population of Iraq, which is quite significant, would overthrow the ruler who was Saddam Hussein. So naturally Saddam Hussein was against Ayatollah Khomeini. Now let's try to cover it up very fast. So इसके बाद क्या होता है, अमेरिका सद्दाम हुसैन को सहायता करता है. सद्दाम हुसैन ईरान पर अगले 10 साल तक हमला जारी रखता है. ईरान इराक का युद्ध बड़े लंबे समय चलता है. 1990 आते आते ईरान के साथ लड़ते लड़ते सद्दाम हुसैन फ्रस्ट्रेट हो गया था, वो थोड़ा परेशान हो गया था, और उस परेशानी में अचानक वो कुवैत पर हमला कर देता. और अमेरिका, जो अब तक सद्दाम हुसैन का बहुत ही घनिष्ठ मित्र था, जो सद्दाम हुसैन को अस्त्र शस्त्र और धन के साथ सहायता दे रहा था, वो अचानक से अकस्मात ही अमेरिका इराक के विरुद्ध हो जाता है, क्योंकि कुवैत अमेरिका के प्रोटेक्शन में था. और अचानक से ईरान इराक वॉर खत्म हो जाती है और अमेरिका इराक पर बहुत अधिक अटैक करता है. इस सब से क्या होता है, भारत का अधिकतर तेल 1990 तक इराक से आता था. इराक से तेल की आपूर्ति बंद हो जाती है. दूसरा, हमारा तेल कुवैत से आता था. कुवैत पर हमले के कारण वो तेल भी आना बंद हो जाता है. अब हमें कैश में तेल अचानक से खरीदना पड़ा. दूसरा, इराक में और कुवैत में बड़े सारे भारतीय रहते थे और बड़े सारे भारतीयों को हमें वहां से निकालना पड़ा. एक ऑपरेशन चला, जो कि अब एक फिल्म एयरलिफ्ट के कारण काफी पॉपुलर भी है. बहुत व्यक्ति उसके बारे में अब जानते हैं. सो दिस ऑल हैपेंड इन 1990. वी हैड टू opt for the rescue operation of large number of NRIs living in Kuwait and Iraq, and the oil that was coming from Iraq and Kuwait that stopped suddenly. So India had a BOP crisis because suddenly we had to give a lot of dollars to buy petroleum, and lot of dollars that were coming from people living in Middle East or particularly Kuwait and Iraq. That flow of dollars stopped. So suddenly Indian economy came into crisis. It's not that this created a crisis. हमारी हालत पहले ही खराब थी. हमारी गाड़ी के लिए पहले ही वार्निंग दी जा चुकी थी कि सर आप इस गाड़ी को मत चलाइए, कहीं भी बंद हो सकती है, लेकिन हम उसी गाड़ी को चला रहे थे. अब जिस दिन वो बंद पड़ी, उस समय क्या हुआ वो महत्व नहीं रखता. ये गाड़ी बंद होने की स्थिति में बड़ी पहले से थी. तो 1990 में कुछ ऐसा विशेष नहीं हुआ है, लेकिन 1990 में ऐसा जरूर कुछ हुआ जिसके कारण वो गाड़ी अंततः रुक गई. और उस रुकी हुई गाड़ी को चलाने के लिए हमें बड़े सारे इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म्स करने पड़े. सो यहां से कहानी शुरू होती है रिफॉर्म्स की. फ्रॉम हियर द स्टोरी ऑफ द इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म्स स्टार्ट. सो नाउ लेट अस टाई योर सीट बेल्ट एंड स्टार्ट द वेरी फास्ट जर्नी फॉर द रिफॉर्म्स. सो 1991 वी स्टार्ट द रिफॉर्म्स. सो हम क्या करते हैं 1991 में हम सबसे पहले सरकारी कंपनियों की मोनोपोली खत्म कर देते हैं. अब किसी भी सेक्टर में, किसी भी क्षेत्र में कोई भी प्राइवेट कंपनी बिजनेस कर सकती थी, जिसकी वजह से प्राइवेट कंपनीज ने हर क्षेत्र में पैसा लगाना शुरू किया. ओके, एंट्री रिस्ट्रिक्शंस फॉर द प्राइवेट सेक्टर्स दे वर रिलैक्स्ड, एंड ऑल्सो द पब्लिक सेक्टर मोनोपोली वॉज इफेक्टिवली एंडेड और रिमूव्ड. So this was one of the first and the most important development. Excuse me for a minute, please. Sorry, I had a bit of an irritation in the eye for once. Now, the exchange rate was allowed to depreciate and maintaining the competitiveness. So exchange rate को हमने free होके गिरने दिया. There is a long theory behind it. It's not very easy to explain it here. Let us simply understand that this would improve our exports. Okay. When exchange rate is high, that is not good for exports. When exchange rate is low, means value of our currency is low, that is good for our exports. Okay, similarly we made our exchange rate flexible, means government will no longer control it, and eventually we made rupee convertible on the current account. These were some of the major developments. What do we mean by convertible rupee on the current account? It means that for the trade purposes, transfer purposes, you can freely get the foreign exchange reserves against the dollar. This is what we mean simply. Apart from these, so many other restrictions that were there on importing the raw material, they were removed. Similarly, other restriction on imports had to be removed because India was also negotiating to join WTO, and some of these were also the joining conditions for WTO. So these are not the complete reforms. This is only a very small summary of the reforms that survey has provided. Now, these reforms improved our growth rate by almost 1 percentage point. Our growth used to be between 5 to 5.5%. This increased to almost 6 to 6.5%. मतलब हमारी ग्रोथ जो 5 से 5.5 के बीच रहती थी वो अब 6 से 6.5 के बीच हो गई. इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड का शेयर जीडीपी में बढ़ गया, मतलब हम पहले से अधिक अब एक्सपोर्ट इंपोर्ट करने लगे थे. और इकोनॉमी में इन्वेस्टमेंट बढ़ने लगा, प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट बहुत अधिक मात्रा में बढ़ गया. So this was the impact of the reforms. If you want to see and read the complete reforms, for that you can refer to my notes. My notes are already available in my Telegram group, and they cover every single reform that we brought, right from banking to budgeting to industry to international trade. Okay, my reforms are the most comprehensive coverage on reforms that is not there in any book, any notes, or any other material, that I can guarantee you. Okay, coming back to the topic. So we have understood what was the first generation reforms and what was the impact. Growth rate improved, trade improved, private sector investment increased. We were very happy with these results, and as a result we further went ahead with the reforms. And this is what survey is trying to highlight, that next government from 1999 to 2003 brought a lot of reforms, but they did not give us result immediately. They gave us result after some time. So next part will explain this puzzle. So what kind of reforms did we bring from 1999 to 2003? First of all, we made it very easy to invest for foreigners. Means the FDI in India became much more easier, up to 51% in large number of sectors. The telecom internet policy was revamped. We gave support to the IT sector. Okay, and similarly there was a focus on privatization, and we privatized a large number of the public sector companies also during this period. Then the focus on infrastructure was also a very important development of this period. The government in fact came into power with the vote of the middle class and the urban population in India, and it was a first government in India which represented that class as a voter base. As a result, the priority of government was Sadak Bijli Pani, not Roti Kapda or Makan, unlike the previous government. So it really tried to deliver on the Sadak Bijli Pani. The energy installed capacity increased by almost 70% in this period. The infrastructure, the length of national highways, that increased more than twice in this period. Some of the key infrastructure projects like Golden Quadrilateral project were also carried out in this period. NHAI became a very important organization. Then we also had the very important FRBM Act. We also had the SARFACI Act. Okay, and we also had other reforms in the banking which made our banking more resilient. So with all these reforms, we revamped our economy in this period. But why we didn't get the result in this period? Why the results came much later? So let us understand what happened between the 1999 to 2004. So between 1999 and 2004, particularly, we were affected by the sanctions on India which were imposed after the Pokhran test. So 1998, India tested the nuclear bomb at Pokhran. And after that, for almost 3 years, India had very high degree of sanctions until the 9/11. After 9/11, America changed its approach towards Pakistan and India, and after that a lot of things changed. But until 2001, or particularly until the arrival of Bush administration, the attitude of the Democrats was very negative towards India. And unfortunately, the Republicans have come across as more of a friend of India in the 21st century rather than the Democrats. Whenever Democrats have been in power, the growth in US-India relations has been negligible. Whereas whenever there have been Republicans in power, the India-US relations have leapfrogged very fast. Coming back to this again. So basically हमने परमाणु बम का परीक्षण किया जिसकी वजह से हमारे विरुद्ध काफ़ी ट्रेड सैंक्शन लगे. देन 1999 में कारगिल वॉर हुई, उसकी वजह से भी काफ़ी समय तक हमारा अर्थव्यवस्था की तरफ से ध्यान भटका. We were distracted from economy for a very long time because of that, and that is very natural. When your economy is at war, your country is at war, then economy takes the back seat. Then there were also the massive droughts in India. Okay, 1999 to 2001 was the period of the worst droughts in India, particularly in Maharashtra and Telangana region, okay, and parts of Tamil Nadu. Very massive drought. Latur region in Maharashtra made a record of the lowest rainfall, okay, during this period. So we had massive drought. So agriculture output was also not good in this period. So despite all the reforms that government was bringing, the economy was not doing so well. Economy was doing decently, around 6.5-7%, but 6.5 largely in fact, but it was not touching 8 or 9 that we were expecting it to. Then in USA there was a crisis around year 2001 in the form of dot-com burst. The internet-based companies, the IT-based companies in the USA, their stock market value crashed, and that kept the IT sector little bit low for the next 2 years. Then there was 9/11 attack on USA, and there was disturbance in the international order for almost 6 months. Another very important issue was Indian banks were not yet very profitable. They were becoming better, but they were not yet very profitable. So structurally, Indian banks improved in this period, and after 2003, they became profitable and they also created more credit. And then the corporate balance sheets were also not very good in this period. So banks and companies were also not very good. And as a result, the loan creation was not desired. मतलब कंपनीज उतना लोन नहीं ले रही थी और कंपनीज उतना इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर रही थी. इवन दो हम बहुत इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहे थे, हम बहुत रिफॉर्म्स कर रहे थे और हमने उनके लिए एक अच्छा मैदान तैयार किया था. लेकिन जैसे ही ये सारे नेगेटिव इफेक्ट्स खत्म हुए, हमारी इकोनॉमी ने 8 और 9% के रेट पे ग्रो करना शुरू कर दिया. सो फ्रॉम 2003 onwards, when all these previous events that I've talked about, their effects were undone, then our economy started doing exceedingly well, exceptionally well for the next 5 years. And that's what we know as a vicious and virtuous cycle period. Unfortunately, Indian economy was in a vicious cycle before 2003, but it came into a virtuous cycle. And this is exactly what the economic survey is arguing for now, that Indian economy has entered into a virtuous cycle. It was in a vicious cycle earlier, but now Indian economy is in a virtuous cycle. हम क्या कहना चाह रहे हैं कि 2003 तक हम कितना भी मेहनत कर रहे थे, उसका उतना प्रभाव हमें नहीं मिल रहा था, क्योंकि इकोनॉमी एक तरह के एक विशियस साइकिल में थी. विशियस साइकिल को हम अगर समझाना चाहें, मतलब विशियस साइकिल हमारी प्रयास का उल्टा अफेक्ट करता है. मतलब जितना हम मेहनत करेंगे हमें रिजल्ट नहीं मिलेगा, जबकि वर्चुअस साइकिल में हमारी मेहनत का हमें और पॉजिटिव रिजल्ट मिलता है. मतलब हम मेहनत 10% करेंगे, रिजल्ट 15% मिलेगा, जबकि विशियस साइकिल में हम मेहनत 10% करेंगे तो रिजल्ट हमें 7% मिलेगा. ये डिफरेंस है. हम मेहनत उतना ही कर रहे हैं लेकिन आउटपुट में बड़ा डिफरेंस आ जाता है. सो दिस इज व्हाट वी अंडरस्टैंड एज विशियस एंड वर्चुअस साइकिल. सो exactly like that, the survey is trying to argue that from 2014 to or 2012 to 2022, economy was in a vicious cycle. What kind of vicious cycle? That in last 10 years there have been a lot of disturbances, starting with the subprime crisis, whose after effect were there in 2012 also. Okay, and then there were other issues as well. I will come to it. Okay. So why our reforms did not give us result? Let us first talk about the reforms. So first of all, if we talk about the major reforms between 2014 to 2022, the central theme of these reforms is ease of doing business, okay, for the companies, and ease of living for the people. हम कैसे कह सकते हैं कि हमने ease of living के लिए काम किया? हमने कैसे लोगों के जीवन को सरल किया है? So what we have done, we have improved the public facilities. All kind of public facilities, we have improved them. Whether it is our railway stations, whether it is our exchange with the government departments, government offices. Okay, everywhere we have improved, and this is visible also in many places. Not everywhere yet, but in many places this is already visible. Then improved infrastructure. Infrastructure हमने कैसे improve किया है? So rural electrification, now every village has a power connection. Okay, electricity has reached all the villages. Roads are reaching all the villages. LPG is now reaching more and more families due to the Ujjwala Yojana. Internet connectivity has improved massively. The road network overall has improved massively. There is improvement in the railway speed, okay, decrease in the railway accidents, improvement in the facilities. So we are making a very fast transition from a third world to the first world actually. And if we continue like this, maybe in 10 years, we will forget that smelly washrooms, dirty trains were a thing of past. Maybe. I hope, I'm an optimist, so I hope for a better future. There has been increasing digitization. Okay. There has been more and more provision for housing for common people under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Then there has been DBT, direct benefit transfer, for the various schemes and subsidies. For example, आपके घर जो सिलेंडर आता है उसके लिए अब आप पूरी कीमत अदा करते हैं, किंतु जो सब्सिडी है वो आपके बैंक अकाउंट में आती है. दैट इज कॉल्ड डीबीटी, डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ट्रांसफर. So we have discussed how the life has become easier and better for people in many aspects. We cannot say it has improved for everyone and it is improved for everyone in a similar way. But for a large number of people, definitely there has been some improvement in the living standards. Then there is ease of doing business. How we can say there is ease of doing business? And here by business we mean all kind of economic activity which include agriculture to running companies to running services and self-employment. So more and more funds are available for agriculture. Government has allocated more and more funds each year for agriculture. And we have spent a lot of money on agriculture productivity. And then we have improvement in the private sector participation in the investment and all other aspects, even in R&D, research and development. Then we can see e-governance. Okay, for private sector, for all kind of people, the e-governance has significantly improved. You want any kind of registration, you want any kind of job done, then it doesn't take much of time and you do not have to run around a lot. Then there is national infrastructure pipelines under which the ports, the cargo trays, the dedicated freight corridor, etc. is being extended. And this definitely is improving the business conditions for everyone. Then agriculture insurance, okay, under various systems. Then manufacturing support that is there due to PIL, Make in India. Then we are arguing that we have also improved the trust between the private sector and the government by reducing the bureaucratic red tape. People do not have to deal with too many bureaucracy or too much of the bureaucracy now. A lot of things are possible through e-governance, through contactless services. Then there is reduction in the tax notices. For example, we were earlier sending almost 40 lakhs tax notices. Now we are sending almost 13 lakh tax notices. So our number of tax notice that we used to send, they have reduced by almost one third. Okay, not by one third, they've reduced to one third, which is an even bigger change. Then there is IBC, which has also improved the closing proceeds for the companies. So looking at all the points, we can argue that there are a lot of steps taken by government to improve the ease of doing business for the companies. In addition, we also had the evolution of digital economy in this period. So for example, there has been eKYC, Jandan Yojana, then there is increase in the banking services through Jandan Yojana, then there is a facility of digital signature, digital locker, UPI. All of this is available almost free of cost or at a very negligible price. Okay, maybe you have to pay a bit for digital signature. A lot of other services are free. Jandan accounts are free. Okay, DigiLocker is free. UPI is free. So a lot of digital economy is also free. Now, since all of these facilities are available, the financial inclusion in the economy is very good, and that has also improved the size of digital economy. So India's digital economy is also doing pretty well. And if we add up all these points, the ease of living, the ease of doing business, the digital economy, then we will notice this improves the ease of doing business. Sorry, we've already said it. This improves the resource allocation, means more and more investment is being made. It improves the productivity. From the same investment, we are getting more output, and this is also leading to formalization of economy, which is our goal for the long term. So, this all is happening in the economy. On what basis? Sorry, my bad. On what basis can we say that there has been increase in the formalization, enhanced productivity, and the efficient allocation in the economy? So there is a single window mechanism now for registering the business and getting the approvals, which is already under operation. Then if we talk about the output under various initiatives, now 1.27 crore companies are registered under the Udyam portal. Okay. The MSME which are registered on portal, just from this portal we can notice almost 1 lakh companies became small from micro. This is a significant development. Means 1 lakh firms are able to transform into better company, the company of the next size. Almost 10,000 companies became medium from small. That is also a significant development. 10,000 companies becoming medium means these are the companies which are candidate to become big companies, corporates in the coming years. So all of this is a very positive development, and we are able to monitor all of this. All of this is in our record, and we are facilitating all of this. Is a symbol that the trust is improving, the productivity is improving, and resources are allocated efficiently. On GST portal, number of taxpayers has more than doubled in the last 5 years. It used to be less than 70 lakh, around 68 lakh number. I remember when GST portal was started, after almost 6 months, we had 68 lakh registered taxpayers. Now we have almost 1.45 crore taxpayers under GST portal. So the growth is very high. We have more than doubled the taxpayers. 28.5 crore. This is a very big number. This many people are registered on the eShram portal. And through this portal directly we can monitor how many people are under NIP. Okay, the new pensions NPS, how many people are under NPS, how many people are under Provident Fund, how many people are getting all their benefits. So 28.5 crore people. That means we are also being able to monitor the formal economy in a much better way. Okay. Similarly, due to the reduction in tax burden, okay, corporate investments have increased. We've discussed all of this. Why they could increase? Because we decreased the corporate tax rate, we eliminated the dividend distribution tax, and that has encouraged the investments. This is also a symbol of increasing investments in the economy. Then the FDI on average, okay, that has increased from about 2% of GDP to almost 2.6% of GDP now. So that is also a very big development. 2 to 2.6 may not look significant, but you know how many billions of dollars are there in that. Our economy is $3,500 billion today. 1% of GDP is $35 billion. Okay, 0.6% of GDP is $20 billion. मतलब पहले से $20 बिलियन तो हर साल हमें सिर्फ FDI अब ज़्यादा मिल रही है, और ये पिछले 5 साल का ट्रेंड है. Then emergency credit line, this was taken by 1.14 crore companies during the COVID lockdown. मतलब कोविड के दौरान सरकार ने 1.25 करोड़ कंपनीज की मदद की या सहायता की, ताकि वो कंपनीज बंद ना हो, वो कंपनीज को अपने कर्मचारियों को नौकरी से ना निकालना पड़े. सो you can see the size of government support and the trust that is now building between the private sector and the government. So all of this is a symbol that the future is good and we are moving towards more productivity, better resource allocation and formalization of the economy. But we've brought all these reforms. Why our growth rate still is 6%? हमारा ग्रोथ रेट पिछले 5-6 साल में क्यों सिर्फ 6% था? इतना सब करने के बाद भी हमारा ग्रोथ 8% क्यों नहीं है? So why our growth is not 8%? So then the survey very clearly, and these are very valid points, I've been reading them for last 10 years. The survey then explains that there was a very bad twin balance sheet problem. Means the banking and the private sector balance sheet was very badly affected by the 2008 crisis. By 2012, our balance sheets were getting very weak, and the banking that came under NPA after this period, हमारे बैंकों में नुकसान बढ़ने लगा था 2012 के बाद से, और कंपनीज के लिए उधार बढ़ने लगा था, जिसके बाद ना तो कंपनीज और लोन लेना चाहती थी, ना ही बैंक ज़्यादा लोन देना चाहते थे, और इस वजह से इकोनॉमी में इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं हो रहा था. सो दिस कैप्ड द इन्वेस्टमेंट लो एंड एनपीए हाई. दिस वाज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्टर. बट नाउ वी कैन से द ट्विन बैलेंस शीट प्रॉब्लम इज नाउ लुकिंग टू बी ओवर. The NPAs are going down and investment are reviving. That is the sign, positive sign that we can identify. Then there was COVID outbreak. Then there were supply side outbreaks. Okay, we had supply side challenges in the last 2 years. So all of us are aware what has been happening regarding other points. So because of these kind of things, our growth rate has been 6%. Now, why do we expect growth rate to be higher in the coming time? Because of all the points that we have just discussed. The twin balance sheet is resolved. The investments have crossed the threshold of 30%. पिछले 10 साल से कभी भी हम इन्वेस्टमेंट को 30% से अधिक नहीं ले जा पा रहे थे, किंतु अब इन्वेस्टमेंट वापस 33-34% की तरफ जाने लगी है. सो इन्वेस्टमेंट हैज स्टार्टेड टचिंग 33-34%. मीन्स now whatever happens, we are likely to touch 7% growth. If this investment is going to touch 39-40%, we will touch 8% growth also. So all of these are very good symbols. Digital economy is very huge. The transactions, the electronic transactions, they are significant. They are highest in the world. Okay, our financial inclusion is very better. The rural productivity is much higher. And given all these numbers, today it is very easy for any company to spread around, to expand, okay, to create awareness, to spread its information. And it is possible to produce in every corner of the country because you are connected to the mainstream, because electricity is reaching there, roads are reaching there, internet is reaching there. So you get information, you get supplies of raw material, and you get electricity to produce the things. So because of this, across India now manufacturing and production is likely to improve. Then another very good thing that has happened in this period is that the world has understood that the global production system dominated by China is not a good thing. And this global production system which is dominated by China should be diversified. मतलब सारा विश्व सिर्फ चाइना पे डिपेंडेंट ना हो. पूरे विश्व की मैन्युफैक्चरिंग लगभग चाइना में हो रही थी, वो एक अच्छा सिंबल नहीं था. सिर्फ चाइना में ना होकर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग को अलग अलग जगह पर होना चाहिए. और जब अंतर्राष्ट्रीय कंपनियां मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के लिए चाइना से बाहर देखेंगी तो भारत एक बड़ा कंटेंडर है. चाइना के बाद वियतनाम, भारत, ये दो सबसे बड़े कंटेंडर की तरह उभरे हैं और ये बहुत इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इनमें आ रहा है. नाउ बिकॉज वी हैव ब्रॉट ऑल दोज रिफॉर्म्स, वी आर रेडी टू टेक ऑल दिस बेनिफिट्स. मतलब अपॉर्चुनिटी तो सबको मिलती है, लेकिन आपने कितनी मेहनत की थी उस अपॉर्चुनिटी को कैश करने के लिए, ये आपकी मेहनत पे डिपेंड करेगा. ओके, वो अपॉर्चुनिटी को आप कितना कैश कर पाएंगे उस समय, ये आपने पहले कितनी मेहनत की है, ये उस पर डिपेंड करेगा. सो भारतीय सरकार ने या भारतीय अर्थव्यवस्था ने बहुत मेहनत की है, किंतु रिजल्ट्स हमें नहीं मिल रहे थे. अब जब मौका आया है, सारा विश्व चाइना से ध्यान हटाकर बाहर नए देश ढूंढ रहा है जहां पर पैसा लगाया जाए, सप्लाई चेन बनाई जाए, तो भारत क्यों नहीं हो सकता? एंड यू नो, इंडिया और भारत इज कमिंग or becoming the number one choice for large number of manufacturers. You know, mobile phones, India was net importer, is net importer even now. But very soon, right from being a net importer, we will very quickly become net exporter. Last month, Apple has exceeded $1 billion worth of export in 1 month only. Okay, in December. This is a very exciting sign. This year alone, when the year finish, we will be able to export $10 billion of mobile phone from India. Who could have thought of this? Okay, so India was importer of mobile phones, but now we are becoming exporter slowly. a very good sign. So अपॉर्चुनिटी हमेशा आती है, किंतु सही समय पर सही जगह पर उपस्थित होना ये आपको करना पड़ता है. भारत आज सही समय पर सही जगह है, इस वजह से उसको इसका लाभ मिलेगा. और भारत सही समय पर सही जगह क्यों है? क्योंकि उसके लिए हमने ये सब मेहनत की है. तो जितने रिफॉर्म्स हमने डिस्कस किए हैं ये सब उसके लिए उत्तरदायी है, जिस वजह से भारत आज वहां खड़ा है जहां उसे होना चाहिए. सो हमने बहुत मेहनत की. वी डिड ए लॉट ऑफ हार्ड वर्क. We brought large number of reforms. We couldn't get results. But now it is the time for results. It is the time for virtuous cycle. And the foundation of the previous 8-year reforms is now likely to take India leap ahead in the future. So I hope this video has really given you a broader idea into the economic survey, and this roughly sums up the entire economic performance of India. The rest of the chapters are just number game. Okay, if you have just covered up these two videos itself also, you have got the gist of the survey. Okay, so let me finish this video. I really hope you found this useful. Thank you.